Hello everyone, it is Joe here from Omnipoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. If you're looking for PTCGO codes, including the stuff from Brilliant Stars, make sure you go ahead and check out the Potown store. You can get a 5% discount on your order using that code Omnipoke. For today's video, we are going to be looking at the newly revealed cards from the Dark Phantasma set. It's a really interesting one because this is going to be part of our August set. The due date is actually very late in August, like the 26th or something like that. So we're probably going to miss it for Worlds, which means we're looking at these cards with an eye on post-rotation. So I'm going to quickly just give you the quick and dirty on that. Thanks to Justin Basil, the website. This is literally justinbasil.com, and they have their own rotation survival guide very quickly. I'll do a full rotation breakdown, but some things to bear in mind when looking at these brand new cards is that we will be losing a lot of things. We're going to be losing Quick Ball, Incense, we're going to be losing the Inteleon engine, a few other key cards here that you can see. Marnie, of course, is going to be a big one. We lose Capture Energy as well. We lose Scoop Up Net. So quite a big number of like consistency and helpful cards. We lose Crobat for draw power as well. So we need to keep these things in mind when looking at the latest cards from this set, because there could be combos that you're thinking of like, oh, that's broken. This is going to be a great combo, but it may have rotated. So just giving you a quick reminder that this is likely going to be mostly impactful for post-rotation. That's essentially, well, it's E-block on, but more or less that's battle styles on. So yeah, you can go on to the justinbasil.com website and see that breakdown. It's really well done and made my life a lot easier when I was looking at these cards for the first time earlier on today. So let's scoot our way down to the trainers as per usual and discuss where I think they sit, and then we'll go through all the Pokemon as well. I'll try and give insights if I can to like GLC and to Cube and other things here and there, and we'll be looking at artwork throughout. So it's a bit of everything, a bit of a mishmash of all sorts today. But let's go over the cards, starting with Arc Phone, allowing you to look at the top card of your deck, then return it to the top of your deck. You can choose one of your face-down prize cards and switch it with the top card of your deck. So this is kind of interesting. It's obviously similar to that Mr. Mime that we had, right? Where you would put it down and you could do the little dance of prizes and stuff like that, which is always pretty interesting to help you with that Jirachi Prism. This time you get to look at the top card of your deck, and I think that information is actually really important because, of course, you're not rearranging your prizes afterwards. So one of the issues with these sorts of effects was, like, you don't know how bad the card you're putting on into your prizes is going to be. But now you at least have the information of what that card is, so you can know to avoid it later. So even if you don't hit the right prize card that you're trying to get out of prizes, you have a higher chance of not taking the card that you arc phoned to then take other prizes, which I think is kind of interesting. I don't really feel like it's worth spending a card in standard format, but there are some wacky expanded combos that I know people will be trying for the Exodia Greedy Dice shenanigans stuff. So yeah, all the power to you for arc phone. Certainly an interesting effect. We like having prize coverage, but I think in general we have Hissuian Heavy Ball coming from the upcoming sets, Astral Radiance, so I think for Pokemon we'll be covered in that sense, and Arc Phone is just that little bit of extra coverage here or there, so just interesting to bear in mind. Then we have Damage Pump, very interesting artwork of this card, and it says move up to 2 counters from one of your Pokemon to another of your Pokemon in any way that you like, and there are some specific cards that can take advantage of this in terms of coming out from the new sets. There's the Hissuian Zoroark V-Star, and there's also a Bisharp coming out in Astral Radiance, which takes advantage of damaged Pawniards. So there potentially could be homes for a card like this, despite it being a very low impact, like pretty poor effect. I think we've had Damage Mover in the past, I think it was called, and yeah, Damage Pump is just another iteration of this. I at first thought this card was going to be really good because there's the new Gengar that can put itself into play and damages itself, right? And you could use the damage pump just to move stuff around. I think it's a little bit less easy now because I initially thought, oh, you could just like pick up your Gengar with Scoop Up Net, but maybe there could be still some combos, like you pick up the Gengar, discard it, and then you would put it back into play. So the pump would be literally just giving another Pokemon some damage for free. But now without Net, maybe it's a bit more awkward. And in general, this is obviously like not a powerful card. It's a combo enabler, basically, is where you need to think about a card like this. But an interesting one nonetheless. Speaking of another combo enabler, some very strange cards being printed in the set. We have the Mechanical Arm. I don't know where this all fits into a theme of Pokemon, but here we are. It's a tool card that says the Pokemon can attack even if it's asleep or paralyzed. Kind of interesting. And I think there's a combo that we're getting from the set with the Hissuian Electrode V, I believe, that wants to have status conditions on itself for damage, basically. So it's going to be a probable card in that deck. Outside of that, I don't think there's much value in it. You'd much rather just play Switch cards than a tool like this to play around status, because Switch cards in general are just far more useful for all sorts of other situations, for when you're not being hit with sleep or para combos. So something to bear in mind there. I don't know if Paralysis Lock is a deck in Expanded anymore, but if it is, this is another nail in the coffin, maybe? You never know. Then we have Calamity Case. Again, really strange stuff going on in this set in terms of the actual physical items that we're getting, but here we go. If the Pokemon V this card is attached to had full hit points and is knocked out by damage from an opponent's attack, put 8 counters on the attacking Pokemon. Very interesting text. It's similar to like a bursting balloon or something like that. It can obviously sit onto your Pokemon, which is really nice. And 8 counters is a significant chunk, especially when we're going into a V-Star meta more and more as the format develops towards V-Stars. This sort of 8 counters can really help set up other V Pokemon to come in and hit for that sort of like 200 mark that we see over and over again on all sorts of attackers. So having a Calamity Case on vulnerable V Pokemon, like a Luminion, for example, could be pretty reasonable. Or, of course, just having it on your main attacker, and then they just take 8 counters. It's not a bad idea at all. This says Pokemon V, so I assume it counts V-Star and V-Max, just as it will with other text. So, yeah, I feel like it's a reasonable card. It's obviously not upfront damage like a Choice Belt, so you'd have to be selective about this, but I feel like this could be a damage fixer. So yeah, something interesting to bear in mind there. It's obviously like a combat card. It's pretty slow. It's reactive. It's forcing the opponent to take prizes. So there'll be stages in the late game where it won't even matter because the opponent's taken a knockout and won the game because of it. So yeah, it is stiff competition to be up against Choice Belt, but it's a potential huge amount of counters that you can place, which is kind of cool. Next up we have Volo, and this guy's from Arceus, right? We have discard one of your benched Pokemon V and all attached cards. Pretty interesting. We do have Collapse Stadium already in the format, and that's not seeing as much play as I initially thought it would. One sort of downside about Collapse Stadium is that it affects both sides, right? So sometimes you're blocking the use of your own Collapse, even if it's beneficial to you, because it could also benefit the opponent, and you want to like first weave in a boss to knock out a vulnerable Pokemon that they would remove from play themselves. And there's other upsides to Collapse that are completely different to Volo. You know, just trying to limit someone's bench in general can be annoying. But Volo physically opens up that space, which a Collapse doesn't do. So you can like move something into the into the discard pile from the bench, and then you free up a space. So you can use the effect of a coming into play V, for example. Again, I'll go back to Luminion as an example here. And yeah, bin it off later, so it's not that downside that loses you the game in a few turns' time. So it's one of those strange things where you're spending your supporter to do it, so it's pretty expensive in this case, compared to, you know, the Power Spike supporters that we'll still have in the next set. Well, in the next block of sets, we'll still have Research, we'll still have Boss, we'll have Roxanne, we'll have a lot of other interesting supporter cards still in the card pool. But being able to just remove a Pokemon from play is very interesting, especially because this, I believe, could also be like V-Maxes, I guess, if we're still sticking to that V rule. So you can tank a hit for an amount of damage, then Volo it away later. So if you're not able to like take advantage of Cheryl potentially just as easily, Volo can do the trick for you. But I guess in that instance, you could easily just Cheryl and just keep it in play. But maybe you're up against a deck that can offer up 1-hit KOs on 3 prize Pokemon or something. You can just Volo that boy away later. So yeah, it's an interesting one. I feel like it has potential and there's combos available to it, but we already have Collapsed and it's performing a lot less. Well, it's just seeing a lot less play than I expected, actually. So it's got some stiff competition, and of course it's a supporter, so yeah. Next up we have Iskan, allowing you to draw 2 cards. Not a very strong effect, but if your active is a Hissuian Pokemon, or has Hissuian in its name, you draw 4. and that's not great. It's similar to things like Coach Trainer that we've seen in the past. Draw 4 isn't enough upside, really, even if you are playing like a pure Hissuian deck. I don't think it's going to be crazy. Maybe it becomes a bit part player as like a one-off copy if you want to dig deeper into your deck rather than have like shuffle draw or dump and draw. But I can't see him being a massive piece of the puzzle. We have a Reizu. I hope I'm saying that right. Similar to that, right? Something like that. We have search your deck for up to 3 evolution Pokemon that don't have a rule box, reveal them, put them into your hand, then shuffle your deck. So we're actually losing a lot of search, going back to those, back to the rotation where we lose Evo Incense and we lose Quick Ball. So a lot of our Ultra Balls probably have to be spent on basics a lot more often. So it's actually pretty welcoming to see a supporter like this to help us get evolution Pokemon. So that's kind of interesting and something to bear in mind that you may not necessarily think of off the top of your head. I actually could see a lot of item engines being 4 VIP Pass, 4 Ultra Ball, and then may need the help of a supporter like this as a one-of if we're playing Luminion. So I feel like it could be interesting in that regard. Because, of course, we need to evolve into our V-Stars to get Kraken. So, yeah, it seems reasonable, actually. I think this is phenomenal in cube formats, and it's probably very good in GLC as well. I feel like the Pokemon Breeders Nurturing supporter is kind of just under the bar for GLC, but I think the fact you can get 3 and it's all to hand, I think it's a big winner for GLC. It can really help you establish some big combos and certainly get like engine Pokemon on the go. So yeah, I think this could be a bit part player if we are using Luminion as like a one-of V Pokemon in our lists. This could easily be a one-off supporter that we could take advantage of. So it seems pretty good, actually, if we're leaning into evolution decks and still rely on like Evo engines, like Bibarel and whatnot going forward. So yeah, very interesting. Then we have the Misfortune Sisters. Look at the top 5 cards of your opponent's deck. You may discard a number of item cards you find there, then they shuffle the non-items back. So it's similar to the Alolan Muck that we used to have. There was an ability on Alolan Muck that used to do it. I believe was it for 7 cards? Possibly 8 cards, I can't remember. So only looking at the opponent's top 5 isn't ideal. Do we have any cards that can manipulate the top of your opponent's deck? I don't think there are any at the moment right now. But I do, like, this obviously fits into the category of, it's not a consistency card. It's trying to add a little layer of disruption here and there. Try and remove some outs for opponents. I feel like it could go well alongside the Pokemon Go Snorlax, where you just stop the opponent having ropes and switches. Sometimes you just hit one out of their top 5 cards and that's the out they required or would require in a few turns' time, so they just have one fewer switch out remaining in their deck, so that then the lock can stick for longer, which I think is a little bit annoying for them. It's kind of like aggressive mill as well. Obviously, it's only item cards, so you can't completely mill out an opponent just by using Misfortune Sisters, because their deck would just be left with Pokemon and energy cards, but you'd speed up the win condition, I guess you could say. But I think it's nice to frustrate the opponent and remove certain resources from them, especially switch outs. So I think is the one that comes to mind first, or other outs that like could sometimes just be a problem for you. For example, like you could sometimes high roll and get rid of like a Tool Scrapper if you were like an Umbreon VMAX Eldegoss loop, and then you've like countered the counters type thing. We are losing Eldegoss V, I believe, right? Let's just make sure of that before I talk myself into trouble. Yeah, we lose Eldegoss, so everything we know about control currently won't be the case by the time we're able to play these sisters, so potentially there's just no place for a card like this. So we'll have to see. It's not groundbreaking, though. It's just like a piece to the puzzle, maybe, if you're going towards like a resource denial style control deck, where you simply just make your opponent not have enough to get over the line against you. Then we have Lake Asuti? Something like that. Pokemon with water or fighting energy attached to them take 20 less damage from opponents' attacks. So it's not type specific, it's energy specific, which I think is pretty important. It does make this even more versatile, I think. And it's not saying basic energy either, so if we get more like special energy in the formats, this could be very interesting, just to have some hit point buff, I guess, which is kind of cool. We also have acceleration for both water and fighting energy. We'll be keeping Melanie, of course, and we have just getting the Gutsy Pickaxe, so seems like a decent stadium just because I imagine those energy will be floating around in the format. reduction of 20 isn't very proactive. It's not very good. It kind of reminds me of like Sirchester Bath that we currently have in Standard and isn't seeing a whole lot of play. And yeah, it's just, again, it's a reactive stadium. And that's not fantastic right now when Stadium Wars are still probably going to be highly contested just because as long as Path of the Peak's in the format, stadiums are going to be highly contested. So yeah, being reactive is a little bit awkward, but it can... there'll be a lot of these types of energy floating around, I think. So it could be live in certain instances to push breakpoints and make you tank that little bit more. So maybe something to be said there. Let's jump back up to the top and talk about Pokemon. Starting with the grass types, we have Parasect here, which has a really interesting artwork. It's rare that you see sort of this angle of a Parasect, I guess. You normally just see the big mushroom cap of it. But it does have like crab-like features. It's kind of interesting, and it's a very like dark and gloomy depiction. But it has it's a 120 hit point stage 1 grass type, and it has Exhaustion Spore. When you evolve, you leave both active Pokemon asleep and poisoned. So being double-sided is really awkward. Obviously, it's going to help a card that we look at momentarily, and I think the idea is this combos with the new Electrode that we're getting. But yeah, sleep is sometimes frustrating for the opponents. Poison is obviously helping damage-wise here and there. There's also a Radiant card that we'll see later on that buffs poison from more than just one counter between turns, so it could be even better of a damage modifier as we look on through the sets here. But yeah, I don't feel that this ability is all that strong. We notably lose Scoop Up Net. You always have to remember that you think of a card like this and be like, oh, I can just pick this up, put it back down, do all this stuff and get lots of uses, even if I only play like a 3-2 line or something. But no, you'd have to play like a 4-4 line of this boy if you want to use it lots. And that's a little bit awkward. And its attack, of course, is pretty bad. Here is the sort of combo they're trying to throw at us. It's the Hissuian Electrode V that you can see here. 210 hit point grass type. It has the Aggrieved Bomb attack for just a colorless, just no energy at all, I should say. It does 100 for each special condition on this Pokemon. So the idea is you can use the Mechanical Arm tool card. You can Parasect yourself for sleep and poison. You're also able to burn yourself in the format for those trivia nuts out there. So you could get 3 statuses on Electrode all in one go and still be able to attack. So in theory, you could do 300 damage plus the 10 from poison. So the gimmick is there, and it's a 0 energy deck potentially as well. So even though you're filling your deck with these silly stage 1s, the silly tool card and whatnot, the potential is there to hit over 300 damage officially for no energy, and potentially the spaces that you save by not playing energy makes this combo worthwhile. Who knows? It's going to be one of these glass cannon combo decks that has to fill up a ton of its bench space to this idiot rather than draw power. But yeah, I think it'll be kind of interesting. And for grass colors, you do 120 and discard all energy from self. No one really is going to get blown away by that. We have a line of Beautifly, which actually is a little bit interesting. It's a stage 2 Pokemon, so always a little sus. 130 hit point grass type 1 retreat. It has the Elated Draw. Once during a turn, you can draw until you have 6 cards in your hand. So it's a Bibarel +1. The downside is that you're having to fit a stage 2 in rather than just Bibarel, and I think that's too much of a downside, probably, more often than not. 1 extra card is obviously very good, and turning basically any supporter card in your head to having a +1 on it makes it cracked. So giving Bibarel a +1 is obviously beneficial, and we've seen how good it is for Genesect, and having multiple of those in play can be, but Genesect's a basic and Beautifly certainly isn't, so that's a bit of an issue. Potentially good for GLC because it's a draw engine grass type, and I think grass is known for having a lot of search but not having a lot of draw. It's really things like Sawsbuck, so maybe this is very good for GLC. You can do a 70 and heal 30. It's not great, but it's fairly efficient. And I feel like this is a good cube card. I feel like Beautifly Dustox are in an interesting balancing cube, and I could certainly see this coming into sort of mid-high cubes. Actually, I think it could just be a mid, actually. 70 damage output for 2 is efficient. Yeah, on that sort of mid-high side of things. Pretty interesting as a cube card, actually. I've just been thinking about that now. I'm coming up with stuff on the fly. Let's go. We've got Dustox. It's also a grass type that has 140 hit points with a 3 retreat cost. That's very... Oh no, it's a 1 retreat cost. It's a lie. They've lied to us. Okay. It has Abyss Power for 2 colorless. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now confused and poisoned during checkup, so between turns. 8 damage counters instead of 1 on that poison. So essentially it's 8 for 2 colorless. That's not very good. The confusion is a little bit annoying here and there, but it gives them extra incentive to retreat, which you don't want because you want them in the active so that they're taking damage between turns. So very odd. And yeah, Cutting Wind does an amount of damage. Maybe it's good in a cube format, but that's really about it. Look at him. Oh my god. Pokemon's great, isn't it? We have Fione that can search for 3 water basics. Not all that good. We have a Hissuian Basculin that can do a random 40 for no attachments. And we have Hissuian Basculin, and then also the Basculegion, which is not a Basculin. Here, the stage 1 version that has 110 hit points, and it has 2 attacks. The first one is Spirit Climb, 20 times the amount of basic energy in your discard pile and shuffle them back into your deck. So it's a stage 1 version of Victini Prism Star, which is kind of interesting, especially because Victini Prism Star had to commit 2 energy to itself to attack in the first place. It means that you don't have to do that with the Basculin, so you can play physically less energy in your deck and get, better numbers, I guess, than you could with the Victini. So that's kind of interesting. It can be a real Hail Mary, and there is a combo with a Radiant Steelix that we'll look at later, which I think is spicy for sure. So this can get high damage. We've got precedent of this in the past. And the V-Stars are similar hit points to, GXs were in the format, so that sort of damage output range that we're looking for is getting more and more appealing as we kind of move away from sort of the 340 being the number we need to hit down to 280. That suits Hissuian Basculin's range because you can quite easily consider playing 17 energy and this being a late game sweep card. So something to bear in mind, actually. Pretty interesting. And then it has a 1 for 70 and discard from self. No one really cares about that. But yeah, this could be a wonderful Mime combo with Radiant Steelix at the very least. And yeah, if ever we need a deck that just plays a shed ton of energy, this could be reasonable. And one thing I love, absolutely adore from Astral Radiance is Radiant Greninja, and giving me an excuse to play a ton of energy just so I can Greninja every single turn of the game, fine by me. I'm absolutely on board with that. We still have Lipard for trade and stuff like that, so there's lots of ways that we can bin off a ton of energy. Won't be easy to rinse and repeats for enough damage. It's probably a once per game effect, but the Victini Prism Star showed that it could be good enough. One thing to note is we already have this effect actually from a Volcarona V, and it's seeing no play, but something to bear in mind. We have a Pikachu that can give itself free retreat if it has an energy attached to it, which is nice. That's a cube upgrade for sure. I know Raichu's good in cube in many power level. And then we have a Raichu that can do 220 if you've used your V-Star power during the game. Probably not good enough, even though it's a 1-prize Pokemon. Its attack cost is too expensive. We do have a Lightning Magnezone V here. 210 hit points, weak to fighting. Obviously a lightning type. And it can force an opponent's a bench Pokemon into the active, and then you do 40 to the new active Pokemon. If we still had the Inteleon engine, this would be pretty interesting, actually, because you could bring up Sobbles and hit them for weakness for KOs. But yes, we are losing that engine, so the 40 damage seems very below the bar. And then we have Splitting Beam doing 90 and 30 to 2 of your opponent's bench. So a little bit of sprinkle damage here and there, not too shabby. Could help set up some numbers later. And I know the V-Star also does some spread, so don't sleep on the fact that this can do a little bit of bench damage. Here is the V-Star, 270 hit point lightning type. With a 2 retreat cost, weak to fighting. And we have the Magnet Grip for lightning and 2 colorless. You do 180. Search your deck for up to 2 items, reveal them, put them into your hand. Pretty interesting, actually, in a format where we're losing a lot of ball search. Getting to tutor out whatever the items that you have remaining in your deck is pretty interesting. It can guarantee some pieces here and there, like tool cards. It could guarantee one of disruption pieces and whatnot. and make them much more viable. So I think that's kind of interesting. And anytime you get to search your deck for specific cards, it's never a bad thing. Just look at, this is basically a Shady Dealings on top of 180 damage, which isn't terrible. And Lightning typing is going to be good because we need something to keep Palkia V-Star in check, because that card looks really good and it's tested very nicely so far for me. Free rotation, of course, and we'll see how it lasts post-rotation. But yeah, the V-Star power is also certainly interesting. For 2 Lightning, you can do 90 to 2 of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So they've really reeled back Urshifu. It's crazy that we just currently have in the format a potential to spam to 120 snipes that gets improved by perceiving in telescopic sight. Magnezone's going to exist in a world where we don't have telescopic sight because it rotates. And they're just saying that 90/90 is enough. But yeah, pretty interesting. And still not bad, actually. It's still good enough to deal with, engine Pokemon. This could be as quick as turn 2, right? So you can easily just be like, okay, knock out Bidoof and one other one-prize thing here or there, and be a headache for the opponent. Really puts them in an awkward spot. And just 2 Lightning energy makes it really easy to come online. Even easier than Urshifu, really. To be honest with you. So yeah, not a bad card at all. I like it mostly because it's potentially a check to Palkia, but also, yeah, it seems efficient, and a little element of disruption in there with the V-Star power that you can use seems okay to me, so I'm kind of on board. We have a Rotom, which has Overhaul. You can shuffle and draw 6. Maybe good for someone's cube. Bear in mind, it's a big basic that can hit 80. But yeah, we have a very interesting Clefairy card as well. It's a 60 hit point basic with 2 retreat cost, Psychic typing, and it has Moon Watching. Once during a turn, if this Pokemon is in the active spot, you can search your deck for a Psychic energy and attach it to each of your benched Clefairy. So the idea is to swarm your board with as many Clefairy as possible, and Moonwatch, and move in and out of your Clefairy. Now, if I remember, we do lose Air Balloon, which is a big deal, and will make this combo far worse. But the whole concept really is, for something like this, you need partners similar to the Mewtwo V-Star, or like Shadow Rider Calyrex, where it doesn't matter that the energy is on Clefairies because they're not doing anything. What matters is that it's energy in play that you can use for damage in other ways. So it's a weird engine. You'd have to play a lot of random switch cards here and there, a lot of Psychic Energy, and a lot of basic search, which is a lot of things. And your board state has to be full of these guys rather than draw Pokemon. So a gimmick for sure, but maybe we can make it work. And to be honest, you don't need the full 4 in play. Sometimes Moonwatching, like with 2 separate Clefairies with 3 in play, could easily be enough to get the job done. So could still be okay there. And it does have Wonderstorm, does 20x the amount of Psychic Energy attached to all of your Pokemon. So I guess in some worlds you could just be going, we're a Clefairy deck, let's go Moonwatching as much as possible and see what happens. But we lose a lot of our switch outs. We lose Balloon, we lose Birdkeeper, so it gets far more iffy to try and make that happen, which is a shame. We do have Clefable, allowing your Pokemon to take 30 less damage from attacks from your opponent's Dragon Pokemon, and it's not stackable. It's probably not good enough, to be honest with you. Simple as. It would only really be if you're playing this random Moonwatching thing and you just happen to be bad to any Dragon-type decks in the format. Yeah, I don't really foresee that being an issue. We have a Gastly with free retreat. It has a fairy symbol, which has got some people talking, but maybe it's just artwork, Maybe it's just artwork. It does have free retreat, though, which is kind of nice. 40 hit points is a real bummer. But the fact that it's a free retreater is good for like Cube and stuff, because I know Gengar's a decent line as well. We have Haunter, probably good enough for Cube. Yeah, we have a really interesting Gengar, actually, not just for like alternate formats, actually good for standard. It's a 120 hit point Psychic type that has the Creeping Back ability. Once during a turn, you may put this card from your discard pile onto your bench. If you do, put 3 counters on this Pokemon. So it is 3 counters, which is good for the trainer card we saw earlier, which moves 2 counters. So you can try and leave this into play, and it can leave damage stuff all around to help you with your quest with good old Hissuian Zoroark V-Star, and it also can help the Bisharp deck. So I think this is a real enabler for 2 decks that like to damage their own dudes. This is going to be very good, to be honest with you. It also has an attack for 1 Psychic Energy, Shrieking Circle, put 2 counters on your opponent's active Pokemon for each of their benched Pokemon. So it could be, you know, a decent chunk of damage here. Could be up to 100 for 1, and it counters as well on a 1-prizer. Obviously, this is like a fairly vulnerable 1-prizer because it's going to be at 90 hit points, basically. But this can be a way to weave in a little bit of damage here or there. So that's kind of interesting as well. We actually always need to think about having non-V attackers in the format because of Miltank, right? Miltank's coming out in Astral Radiance, really annoying card to deal with, but having stuff like this Gengar just naturally on your deck could give you an answer to what would otherwise be an annoying threat. So seems like a really good combo enabler, actually probably essential for Zoroark. I wasn't convinced of Zoroark just relying on Gapejaw Bog, but having Gengars in your list, and probably like 4 Gengar, honestly, just use this almost like Execute, where you just like pop this guy back all the time and damage him, is going to be really awesome. So yeah, I really am a big fan of this Gengar. I think it's great. We have a Mr. Mime that has Pound for 1 colorless, and Trick Slap, which does 90. You play rock, paper, scissors with your opponent. If you win, prevent all effects of attack, including damage done to this Pokemon during your opponent's next turn. I really want to put this into Cube because I like playing rock, paper, scissors with my friends. So I'm excited for that. We have Misdreavus, Mismagius. The Mismagius is a 90 hit point stage 1 psychic type. It has Grudging Incantation. If this Pokemon is at max hit points and is knocked out by damage from an opponent's attack, place 8 counters on the attacking Pokemon. So very similar to the Chest tool card. Was it Chest? I think it was. That we saw earlier, but now inbuilt on a Mismagius. What's great is this card will naturally be at max hit points like way more often, right? You think right now that there's Zigzagoon and Inteleon, but I'm pretty sure we lose both, don't we? Yeah, we lose Zigzagoon, and we'll still have Chilling Reign Inteleon, but we'll have lost Shady Dealings. So both of those things that completely ignore the fact that you're at full hit points will be basically rotating. So it's likely that we're just hitting stuff in the face a lot more often, which is kind of good. So this will be live. The only issue is that you're only placing 2 counters on each of your opponent's Pokemon. It's probably too slow to get a full-on Mismagius deck rolling right now. Maybe you put this... Oh no, this can't go on a chest as well, because I think the chest had to be a V Pokemon, right? Yeah, so you're just not getting enough damage done with this guy. But pretty interesting, and very scary, actually, for Cube, because this racks up very quickly, and 8 counters is very significant. I guess in Cube there could be ways that you could like play around this sort of effect. And it works well in GLC, I think, as well, because Psychic naturally likes having a minor spread approach here and there, so one to consider. We have a Radiant Gardevoir, 130 hit point Psychic type, that has the ability Devotion Veil. Your Pokemon take 20 less from your opponent's Pokemon V's attacks. I think it's reasonable. It's competing with a lot of very good cards. I think Greninja is always my litmus test. Feels far too good to say no to 2 cards potentially every single turn. Hawlucha is damage, but is only to V maxes, so that card like sort of starts at its peak and gets worse and worse over time, whereas the Gardevoir will remain just as relevant because it is obviously protecting Pokemon from V-Star's attacks as well. So it could be used in a tanking archetype to try and keep stuff out of range. So it could be relevant in that regard if that is going to be your angle with any of your decks. We have Psychic, which does 70 and 20 more for each energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. It's reasonable. Again, we like incorporating non-V attackers into our decks if we have to. It's expensive to attack with this guy, of course, but maybe it's something we could try and weave in if you're worried about Miltank as well. So obviously it's not super relevant. This is a Psychic type. A lot of the Radiant Pokemon just go into play for their abilities, but yeah, this one could also attack when needed. We have a Chimecho, which seems very bad. We have a Hissuian Zorua, which can draw a card for free. I'm going to play this in my cube because I have I ignore like the initial parts of a Pokemon, so I get to upgrade a Zorua, which I'm happy about. And we have a Hissuian Zoroark. It's a 120 hit point Psychic type that has 2 attacks. The first is Hex of Ruin for no energy at all. At the end of your opponent's turn, the defending Pokemon is knocked out. Of course, it's very easy to get out of that effect and not be Worried about it? For 1 Psychic, you have Bring Back, choose 1 card from your discard pile, reveal it and put it into your hand. It's only 1 card. I don't think it's going to be relevant enough, unfortunately. Yeah, it doesn't seem relevant. Maybe like a Roxanne Hex of Ruin Gambit is what you can go for in certain situations, but yeah, it's not going to pay off. We have an Anamorous V. It's a psychic type, horrific artwork. It's 5 bans, so I don't feel bad saying it's horrific artwork, but I don't like the design of this Pokemon at all. It's one of the genies, right? The new genie that we have. It's a 2/10 hit points psychic type, weak to metal, to retreat. It has the ability Guardian of Love. As long as this Pokemon is in the active spot, prevent all effects of your opponent's Pokemon's abilities done to your Pokemon with psychic energy attached. So the fact that this has to be active already makes me pretty sus, because its damage output isn't good enough to be in the active position for any reason. Blooming Tail for Psychic 2 colors does 100 and attach 2 basic energy from your discard pile to your Pokemon in any way that you like. It's just that 100 damage just so below the bar, even with the acceleration that Psychic has and the acceleration that this card provides. It just doesn't seem like it's worth it at all. And yeah, the fact this has to be active makes it pretty null and void, I would say. We have the very cute Hissuian Growlithe. You love to see it. It can burn stuff. And we have a Hissuian Arcanine. It's a stage 1 with 130 hit points. It has Omnidirectional Destruction for 10 damage. If you have no cards in hand, this does 150 more damage. So this is kind of like the new Gramble style effect, but you need to go all the way down to 0, which is pretty insane. 160 isn't what it once was either, unfortunately. It's great that you can do this for colorless, not colorless, 0 energy whatsoever. So again, you could potentially play a no energy deck and devote your entire deck just towards getting to no hand and then reloading and whatnot to make sure you do the next thing each turn. So that's kind of cool. It's great that it's a fighting type. Fighting type coverage is relevant because, of course, Arceus V-Star is still going to be around. And I believe Hissuian Zoroark is also weak to fighting, and the Magnezone that we saw earlier. So there might be a few things in the metagame that are weak to fighting, and maybe that's this card's niche. But it's going to be hard to have an engine that works like this, because, let's face it, Gramble was such a specific engine to make it work, and I don't know if we have the cards in format to try and do something similar here, unfortunately. And its second attack just isn't going to be it. We have a look at this Machop. What a genius. 2 strong for cube, 1 for 20 is broken. We have a Machoke, again, great artwork. I love the incorporation of all the Arceus stuff that we have in this set artwork-wise. We have a pretty spicy Machamp, actually. It's a 150 hit point, fighting type stage 2, but boy, he gets a lot bigger. The Blacksmith's Muscle ability says that if your opponent has 3 or fewer prize cards remaining, this Pokemon gets a 150 hit point buff. And you also have Strong Arm Lariat that does 100. You may choose to do 100 more damage. If you do during your next turn, this Pokemon can't attack. But you can more or less get out of that just by like shimmying the guy around with switch outs and whatnot. So a potential to just do 200 most turns is very reasonable on a Pokemon that has 300 hit points. It's sounding like just a V-Star, right? It sounds like a V-Star, but it only gives up 1 prize, at least as you get into the mid-game. And what's really interesting for Stage 2 decks is, a lot of the time you sacrifice turns in the early game, right? You spend your first turn, let me just find my basics. You spend your second turn, let me just try and evolve up as many things as possible. And then it's by about turn 3 where you actually start attacking your Stage 2s anyway. So you may already be down, like, the muscles may already be flexing by the time you've got your first Machamp ready to go. The difficulty will be only having a board state late game of only Machamps, you know, because the issue is that your opponent could just like go around the Machamps and find easier prizes elsewhere. Or the other issue is, of course, that you've not been doing anything for a number of turns and they like still get so far ahead in the race that even the 1 prize Machamps can't catch up. So there are still a few issues here, for certain, but I think if your late game is a board of literally 3 Machamps and you're just lariating between them and like finding pivots and whatnot, it could be super scary. So I think it's a lot of fun. It's very, very good for GLC. Holy, I just thought about this card for GLC. What the heck? This boy is huge, and Machoke is already very, very playable in GLC for the fighting types. because it protects you against so much. So this is crazy in GLC. Look at the size of him. Oh my goodness. Okay, that's wild. And probably too strong for Cube. So yeah. But yeah, what a GLC threat. 300 hit points in GLC, by the way. That's before mods. Like, that's wild. Okay, you'll love to see that. We've got a Sudowoodo, fighting type basic with 110 hit points. It has Joust, one of my favorite attack names of all time. I really like the artwork on this Sudowoodo as well. Nice. Before doing damage, discard all tools from your opponent's active, and 50 for fighting colorless. Yeah, pointless. We have a Gligar. Again, they're killing it with the artworks, man. Look at that. We've got a Gliscor, also an interesting line, potentially for Cube. This is probably too strong for Cube. Even though it's coin flip based. You flip 4 coins, you do 50 for each heads. If you flip 2 or more, you paralyze the opponent. It's in that weird in-between where it's too good for Cube, probably not good enough for GLC. We have Gallade V, a really interesting fighting type basic that has Rising Sword for fighting colorless. You do 20 and an additional 50 for each prize card you've already taken. So this is looking to be a finishing blow, essentially, with the Rising Sword coming in. Fighting typing is very relevant, of course, in the format right now. It could continue to be relevant, certainly, as things go on. And the fact that it's just a late game threat that gets better the more prizes you've taken means you're the one in control of it, unlike something like a Shaman V-Star where you just need to wait and wait and wait until the opponent's ready to rumble. If you've come out the gate aggressively, you can have a Gallade swinging late on, which is very cool. And yeah, it can certainly do enough late on to deal with opposing V and V-Star Pokemon. It just needs to get over the line. And we have Gutsy Pickaxe for acceleration. I feel like it's going to be a nice partner for things like the Lucario V-Star that we've seen, where you have that really good V-Star power as an attack that can easily get like a big one-hit KO in many matchups, and then you're sort of like floundering in the mid-game where you just don't have much of a follow-up play, where you're just hitting that consistent 220. It's not really like enough. But then having a Gallade to like give you a backdoor sweep gives you a power spike in the early turns, like an average mid-game, but then a power spike again in the late game. So it could be an interesting card for a fighting archetype like that. We have Zubat, which is a free retreater, not bad. We have really awesome Golbat artwork. What's he doing here? Is he like singing or something? I don't know what's going on here. He's chilling, that's all I know. Certainly screeching. But yeah, very cool. It's got free retreat as well. We've got a Crobat, which is also hyped for GLC. I actually saw Mahone already tweet about this. You have Poison Fang for 1 dark, you do 50 in poison, and for 3 colorless, you can do 30 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon. If you knock them out, take 2 more prizes. So it's potentially a new threat for GLC in the Dark type, which is already a very good type in GLC. And you can already see a reason to play a Crobat line, because there's a Golbat that's Dark type that draws 2 cards as well. So yeah, scary card in a line that already has draw power. So yeah, great. And pivot potential, because even the Zubat is a free retreater. You'll love to see it. We have Murkrow that can get out more Murkrows, maybe good for Cube, because Honchkrow is an interesting line at times. And we have a Honchkrow that can draw 3 for a colorless and do 120 and switch this with one of your benched Murkrow. Not all that good. If you're doing hit and run strats, you don't want to be feeding them easy prizes. You want to be feeding them stuff that don't give up prizes or is annoying, like Miltanks. So not great text there. Here's the Hissuian Sneezler. It's a dark type basic that has the Poison Peak ability, putting 2 more counters on your opponent's poison Pokemon during checkup. So it's basically a Verbank on an ability, which is nice. So it actually can push your Electrode up to 330. Good number, I guess. You just need to fill your board with even more stuff that doesn't draw cards. So, good luck to you, I guess. It's going to be a combo deck, I guess. But it's going to be hard to draw enough cards to make it all happen. And it can do 90 and poison, so effectively 120, right? With the Poison Peak in action. So, not the worst, I guess. We have Spiritomb that has the Cursed Message ability. It's 60 hit points, basic, by the way. If this Pokemon is knocked out by damage from an attack from your opponent's Pokemon, search your deck for a card and put it into your hand, then shuffle your deck. Really nice text. It's really fantastic to give yourself a card post being KO'd, right? Because it means that even if you've been hand disrupted that turn, you can go ahead and Cursed Message out a card from the deck to make sure that you have a play for the following turn, even before you promote your next Mon. So, yeah, very nice. It's an amazing ability. And it has the attack Soul Chain for Dark Dark. You do 10 plus 60 more for each Spiritomb in your discard pile. So you're able to do 190 for 2. Not bad. We have Dark Acceleration, so that's okay. You have to keep reloading Spiritombs throughout the game, and 190, like, it's okay damage, and because you have this ability, you can actually make more things happen in the background. Like, maybe you could have some extra damage mods here and there that could make this better. I don't think this is that bad, actually. We're going to have a lot of things that play from the discard pile by the looks of things, but yeah, it's actually interesting as a single prize Pokemon. I love that ability. The ability is crazy. And it could be interesting as well for Cube, because there's enough Spiritombs that you could end up having like a mini Spiritomb package and just have like 2 of this guy and have like 3 or 4 of the other random Spiritombs. And it actually becomes a mini archetype within your Cube potentially. So that's also very cool. Really interesting stuff. We have a Croagunk and Toxicroak. Look what they've done to my boy. When are we ever going to get a good Toxicroak again, man? He was spoiled in the SP era, but yeah, otherwise terrible. Here's the super spicy Radiant Steelix. A 170 hit point basic. Now we're talking. Look at the size of him. You have, for 1 colorless, Energy Beam does 20, and you can attach up to 2 metal from your discard pile to this Pokemon. I mean, maybe you can risk trying to Energy Beam, but it's probably getting knocked out straight away. It does have the Finishing Rend attack, though, which has got some people talking. For Metal colorless, you do 60, and you discard cards from the top of your deck until you have 1 remaining. So basically, you jimmy out your 1 card left in deck, then flip the rest over like a pancake, try and filter out as many energy you find, and you do 60 plus 30 more for each energy discarded in this way. So you have big 1-hit KO potential. You need to play a good amount of basics to do so. But yeah, you can one-shot stuff. So this could be a late-game finisher, in theory. The only issue is, late game, naturally, a lot of your energy will have found their way to the discard pile rather than into the deck. So you may need to play some energy recovery to try and make this happen. Or you could be building a complete Gambit deck where you play cards like this and the Hissuian Legion that we saw earlier. Those could be an interesting pair where you just play a ton of energy, try and get out your Legion, then finishing Rend and Legion it all back into the deck. Then you have a deck full of energy, but hopefully you've taken 2 big up trades with 1 prize Pokemon and find a way to take the final prize. Who knows? Make sure you have good cards in hand before you discard the rest of your deck, though, with this Steelix. And for those saying, oh, this is a great way to get to the bottom of your deck for control loops, because a lot of the time control is reliant on getting to the bottom of their deck so they can do, you know, like how we saw Orangaroo stack 3 cards essentially and then draw back into them every single turn. We are losing Eldegoss, so we don't have Eldegoss loop to worry about. So this isn't going to be a random way to or for Sander to just get metals into the discard pile, like Sorcerer attach, blow away my entire deck and just get you in a loop as soon as possible. We lose Sorcerer, right, as well? Yeah, we even lose Sorcerer, so there's no acceleration for this card. Unfortunate, so... Well, there's no item excel anyway, but yeah. We can find a way, maybe. You never know. Pretty spicy card nonetheless. I think it's certainly the meme category of Radiant cards, unfortunately. More great artwork. Yes, Kamir, thank you very much. We have Bronzong doing some stuff. Not really. We have a Hissuian Goodra, a 160 hit point dragon type that has the Steel Shelter ability. Ignore all damage done by your opponent's Pokemon V. Attacks to your basic Pokemon that have any metal energy attached. So very specific. Your Pokemon have to be basics and they have to have metal energy attached. But you give yourself immunity from V Pokemon. My issue is, can't they just Gust KO this? Yes, they sure can. The idea is that hopefully you've got Pokemon that are putting on enough pressure that even by gusting and KOing this Goodra, they're like losing a prize race. So maybe this is kind of similar to things like we've seen in the past. What's it called? Kling Clang, stuff like that. where you protect yourself from various Pokemon, and here we're protecting from Vs. I feel like this card could be dangerous. It's kind of boring, obviously, and it's reactive, and your opponent can sort of take out things like Sligoos and Goomies, and the Goodra itself, of course, isn't under its own protection, so it can easily just get Gust KO'd. But maybe that's giving you enough time to skew the prize race and attack with your guys that have, you know, loaded up fighting energy, I guess, metal energy, I should say, to get things rolling. So maybe it's good enough. It's an annoying ability for sure. I'm always sus of stage 2s, but there you go. We have a Hissuian Goodra V. It's a dragon type with 220 hit points, no weakness. It has Toppling Goo for water metal. You do 60 and your opponent switches their active with one of their benched. A little bit of added disruption, a little bit annoying there sometimes. And you have the shell rollouts for metal water colors. You do 140. During your opponent's next turn, this Pokemon takes 30 less damage from attacks. It's an annoying energy cost to try and build up. I guess we're trying to use Melanie in this list, probably, to try and make this more suitable. It makes you tank, which is kind of good. It puts you up to 250, which is an annoying number, especially with no weakness. That can be reasonable, but it's mostly about the V-Star here. And we have 270 hit points. Look how sad he is. Why are you so sad, Goodra? Come on, man. Sadness. We have 270 hit points. No weakness, by the way. You have the Iron Rollout for water metal colorless. Really, again, annoying attack cost. It does 200 damage. During your opponent's next turn, this Pokemon takes 80 less from attacks. Okay, pretty tanky. Pretty tanky for sure. And it has the Moisture Star, V-Star power, allowing you to heal all damage from this Pokemon. Yo, this card is boring. This card is a snooze fest. Okay. I mean, it's just a flat 200, but it's tanky as heck. It doesn't have much synergy with, like, healing cards that we'll have in the format, but is this our next, like, Lucky Ice Pop quad boring deck? Could easily be, right? Could easily be. Man, maybe just the fact that you're reducing 80 and have a one-time use of this V-Star power means you win a lot of prize trades against opposing V-Stars. This card is, like, no thrills, but it's pretty good, actually. Scary card. Scary card. Okay. Yikes. We have a Snorlax that has Tranquil Blubber. You'll love to see it. We have prevent all effects of attacks done from... prevent all effects from your opponent's attacks done to this Pokemon. Fine. Heavy Snoring for 3 colors does 180. Send it to sleep. And between checkup, you're flipping 2 coins, so it's probably staying asleep. Yeah, not good enough. Is it good for GLC? 180 is a lot of damage. That's a lot of damage. Maybe good enough for GLC. Look at the size of it. Okay, we have Apom. It's got, looking at your opponent's deck, okay, no big deal. We have an Ambipom. Search your deck for a card and put it into your hand. Flip until you get Tails. Yo, think about how many cards if you high rolled. Yeah, terrible. And here's the Hissuian Zoroark V and V-Star. I think it's the last cards we're looking at today, and probably the most interesting, actually. It's a 210 hit points V, the basic, and it has 2 attacks. You have Hollow Swap for free. You do 30 damage and switch with one of your benched. Not bad. It can get your guy out of the firing line, which is good, similar to OK Strafe. But you don't even have to commit energy to him, which is Pog. And we have Shadow Cyclone for colorless, colorless, colorless. You do 130 and can move an energy from this guy onto one of your bench. So again, if you're in that panic situation where you're having to hit with this guy, you can at least move energy onto another target so that you have attackers for the following turn. So even if you whiff your V-Star or whatever, you can at least be doing something, which is, I guess, is okay. But the V-Star is very cool. It's weak to fighting. It's a colorless Pokemon. But of course, you can remove weakness with Dunsparce. That's staying in format, I'm pretty sure. And we have an attack here that is Baleful Curse. You do 50 for each of your Pokemon that have any damage counters on it. That includes the active, potentially. So you can be doing up to 300 damage just from all 6 of your Pokemon having damage in play, which is very cool. You can, of course, buff this even further with Belt and stuff. So, yeah, it's hitting a really good threshold. You're having to damage yourself, which makes you easier to get KO'd, but I think you can live with that because you can be easily KOing other V-Stars, I guess, which is kind of that range that we want to have in format, which is cool. And of course, we have that Gengar that we talked about. We have Gapejaw Bog as well. There's even that item card that we saw earlier that allows to move counters here and there. So actually pretty interesting. And I think you could easily see yourself in that 200 range pretty comfortably, and then getting towards the 300 range is a bit of a push, but you can get it done with some combo pieces here and there. And you have the ability Phantom Star that allows you to discard and draw 7. Heard that before? Yeah, it's research. You get a free research on this boy once per game. Oh, wow. And research has great synergy with Gengar. Fantastic synergy with Gengar. So that can really help you speed up your Baleful Curse. I think before I saw Gengar, I wasn't too excited about this card. I thought people were getting overexcited over something. But now that I've seen Gengar, I'm like, yeah, this is certainly a deck that's getting handed to us on a platter, right? You just play Gengar, Zoro, and yeah, even with DTE, you can already be knocking out V-Stars even with 280 hit points. So for one attachment, you can just be getting over the line on 2 prizes. Seems very good, and you have inbuilt consistency, which is kind of pog as well. So let's go over the highlights, I guess. The item cards are all like super specific. I think if I'd had to guess, I think Arizu or Irizu has some potential, at least in post rotation, where we're losing a bit of Pokemon search. Because man, this could get Zoroark and double Gengar, and then you can just research 2 Gengars away, or it could get you triple Gengar, and then you just research off of your. Oh boy, what a combo. Okay, pretty spicy. I think the Goodra is very good. Yeah, that card seems boring good. This card just seems boring, but also could be a factor in the format that we have to bear in mind. I think because a Miltank will already have to be playing decks that at least have to have a couple answers to annoying Pokemon, but obviously this could be much bigger things. You know, you could have really big basics in your deck that just have a ton of metal energy attached to them, which is scary. I think the sort of poison thing with Electrode is probably just too much work. Spiritomb's kind of cool. I can see that being kind of roguish. Maybe I'm a dreamer. Gallade is interesting because fighting types are interesting. Yeah, the Gardevoir could be important. Gengar's a huge combo enabler. I really like that boy. The Magnezone is really format dependent. If we're seeing still a ton of Palkia as we continue on into post rotation, I think it's going to be relevant. Otherwise, I don't think it has enough power. And yeah, the Electrode, like, good luck drawing all your combo pieces and getting it all to work. But if you do, it's a lot of damage, I guess. So yeah, that's my thoughts, my initial impressions on Dark Phantasma. Or Phantasm, I don't know what it's going to be for us, but it's going to be part of our Lost Origin set in August. Post-rotation, post-worlds, we expect. But yeah, it's looking pretty interesting. We lose a lot of things to rotation. This is my first real look at post-rotation because of these cards. But I'll be doing a full rundown of that in a future video, don't you worry. I'll be clearing all that up for you and making it all in one place for you to be able to look at. But yeah, some interesting cards for sure. Some powerful V-Stars coming out, and yeah, very interesting set overall. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll see you in another video tomorrow. Cheers.